Good morning. I am just going to wait a couple of minutes and see if anybody else joins real quick. And then we will get started. If you have joined me already, could you please go ahead and type your name in the chat box to sign into class for me? It looks like a beautiful day today so far. If you haven't been out and about, the trees are turning pretty quickly the last couple of days, and they're really pretty. My drive to work was really pretty this morning. Good morning. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is my grumpy cat. This is probably exactly what my face looks like in the morning when I first get up before I've had coffee. If I get a little cranky, most of the time it just means I need more coffee. So, and I do have, of course, some useless facts for you this morning. So Arabica coffee varieties such as Java and Mocha are named after, can you guess? It is A, the plantations where they're grown, B, the coffee grower who developed that variety, C, their predominant flavorings, or D, their ports of origin. Take a guess at it. Java and Mocha. So the answer is, I think it was D. I don't even remember which one. Yeah, D. Their port of origin is what they're named after. That is actually where they're grown and shipped out of. Java is the name of an island off of Southeast Asia, and Mocha derives from Mocha, Yemen. Who knew? I had no idea. I love coffee facts. So today we're going to talk about author's purpose. And let me see, I think somebody else might be trying to join. No, different alarm system. I don't know. So I like to read all kinds of books. I also like to write short stories and essays. That wasn't something I always liked to do, and I always did not like reading. As a matter of fact, I think it was my worst subject in school. And the reason is because I've shared this in a previous class, but I have ADD, attention deficit disorder. I still have it as an adult. I had it as a child. I had it before they even knew what in the world it was. You know, it wasn't a thing when I was a kid. I'm a lot older than I look, but it was not a thing. They were not worried about diagnosing, children with ADD or ADHD or anything like that. So when I was in elementary grade school, they would always, group you in those reading groups by your reading level. And I would always end up in one of the lowest reading groups. And my mother couldn't figure out why they would do that, because at home I would read to her and she would read with me and I read just fine. But what it was it wasn't that I couldn't read, it was that I had a focus problem and I could not focus or pay attention, especially with a lot of things going on around me. And I struggled for a lot of years with that through school. And it really wasn't until junior high, or I think it was maybe like sixth grade or something like that, I had a teacher that noticed that whenever she would ask me to read out loud in class, I read just fine. But if I had to read on my own, then I had problems, and I had problems answering the questions and things like that. And I used to just freak out when I'd see a passage that I had to read and answer questions, because I found it very hard to focus. So I already, made up in my mind that I wasn't going to understand or wasn't going to be able to answer the questions, or my mind was so busy that I would want to skip to the questions and not really read the um, passage that I was supposed to read. So I struggled with that for a long time. And it wasn't until I had a teacher that let me read out loud a lot in class. And then, or she would let me go kind of like to a corner off by myself or even out in the hallway to do my homework, because I could kind of read out loud. And for some reason, if I would read out loud, then I did much better and I comprehended things and got my questions right. And so I actually became more and more comfortable with reading once I did that. And now I still read out loud sometimes, especially if I'm having a hard time focusing. I'll just go somewhere quiet away from others and read out loud. But that's something that I've had to overcome. But the more I read, the more I love to read. And then I started writing, and I write short stories. I hope to write a book one day, a whole book, probably more than one. That's on the bucket list. But the more I read, the more I started to understand that written words are the same as if somebody was talking to you. So today, basically, we are talking about author's purpose and author's point of view. So basically, what that is about is we want to figure out what the author's point is. What are they trying to tell us? And my husband, I'm the type of person that I pay much more attention to people, their attitude, their mannerisms, their tone of voice, things like that, rather when they're talking to me, rather than what the words they're actually saying. I'm always reading between the lines with people. I think that just comes very naturally for me. I've done that my whole life. And that I know a lot of people are like that. You may be like that. And that's just a way of figuring out, okay, what's this person trying to tell me? What are their intentions? Are they trying to persuade me of something? Can they be trusted? Is the information they're telling me, is it true? Can it be trusted? Is it accurate? It's just ways to find out what is going on around you. And when you're reading, it is the exact same thing. We're doing the exact same thing every day, just as if we were, evaluating a person that's talking to us. So I like to look at it that way. And once you kind of look at it that way, the written word is just the same as if someone was talking to you. So we're just trying to decipher, what are they talking about? What do they want us to know? So a lot of authors have different reasons for writing. One purpose is to entertain you. They may write interesting things. Things happen in books that may not happen in real life. For example, the Twilight books. I don't know if you've ever seen those or read those. I've read them all and I actually loved them. I don't care about the movies whatsoever. I think the movies are terrible, but the books are wonderful. And they have all these fantastical things. These are for entertainment. So they have vampires and werewolves, and they have these extraordinary powers and strength and immortality, speed, things like that. You might like something like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is another, book written for entertainment, and it has all these fantastical things like elves and wizards and orcs, dwarfs and dragons, and magical things. And so these would be examples of entertainment books. Another type of entertainment book is Westerns. Growing up, my brother loved to read, and he loved Western books, especially Louis L'Amour books. He would read tons and tons of those, and there's tons of them out. I think the actual writer of those books has passed away a long time ago, but they have writers that keep that the series and different storylines up, and they still put out books today. They're really good if you like Westerns. But Westerns are really neat because they're always, dramatic. The characters are always larger than life. They have, shootouts and people that are shot and left for dead, and then they come back to life when you think they're dead. They're all kinds of stories. And I always think about Tombstone. Tombstone is one of my favorite movies. And if you think about, Doc Holliday and Tombstone and Wyatt Earp, and in the very end, Wyatt Earp is, he's going to face off with his nemesis, and I cannot remember that guy's name, but the very end, he's going to have a draw with this guy, and Doc Holliday was supposed to be, in bed on the brink of death, dying of tuberculosis, and was just barely hanging on. And out of nowhere, Doc Holliday shows up and actually faces off with the Wyatt Earp's enemy. And it's like he came back to life when everybody thought it was very dramatic, but I love that movie. But Westerns, that's a good example of a good Western story. Some other authors are writing just to inform you, and that's exactly what it means. They're just relaying information. They usually give lots of facts and details in informational writing. Most of our school books and textbooks and things are going to be informational type of text and writing. And most of the assignments and things that you've had have come out of textbooks, and they're informational. Another reason writers may write is just to explain things. So it may be a self-help book, a cookbook, or something of that sort. This is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a very popular book. I've actually read this book probably 3 times myself, just because I was a business major, and the instructors really like this book. And so I had to read this lots of times, and it actually does give you some really good information and tips about how to be a highly effective person or team member, worker. And then we have a cookbook. This would be a how-to self-help type of book. And those are all just to explain things. And then we have another reason writers may write is just to describe things. It may be descriptive writing. It may be short stories. Descriptive writing is very vivid. It tries to paint you a picture of give you a vision of like you were there. So if you're trying to figure out if it's a descriptive type of text, you may ask yourself if the author uses the 5 senses. So they're usually going to write things that use your sense of hearing, sight, smell, taste, touch, those type of things. So they're going to be very descriptive, so that they're describing the smell and the touch and the taste of things. That type of thing. Another type of writing may be persuasive writing. So it may be political essays or short stories to try to get you to vote for a particular person. It may be to persuade you to save the environment or save water, something like that. Another type of persuasion might be like advertisements and things that are written to try to get you to try a new product or something like that. So we should always ask ourselves when we're reading, what is the author trying to tell me? Are they trying to make me believe something or take a specific action? If they are, that would be persuasive writing. Okay, any questions so far? I felt like I went through that a little bit fast, but if you're still with me, we're just going to keep moving right along. And we're going to talk about author's point of view. So now that we know the different types of writing that authors use, now we have to ask, what is their point of view? In literature, point of view is who is telling the story. It allows readers to see the thoughts and feelings of the characters. A good example of this would be, I don't know if you've ever watched A Christmas Story. Surely you have. It comes on for 24 hours on Thanksgiving Day, I think, usually every year. And then you'll see it all through Christmas, and it's about the little boy that wants the Red Ryder BB gun. But if you think about narrative or first person writing, that's the narrator is telling the story. In the Christmas story, the little boy is telling the story about his life, about that event, about that Christmas. That would be first person. And then the narrator is one of the characters. He was telling that as himself. It was a grown man, but he was talking about when he was a kid, and he was the narrator. The first person point of view uses words like I, me, we, or us. And then we have third person. The narrator is not a character in the story. It's just a outside person telling the story. He may talk about the thoughts or feelings of a character, but he is not the character himself. Some of the third person point of view pronouns that they use is he, she, him, her, they, them, theirs, words like that. And then there's other types of text, such as informative, persuasive, scientific, maybe historical text. The author's point of view is his or her attitude towards the subject. So a writer may choose not to state his or her point of view outright or directly, but the language and the tone that he uses usually reveals what their point of view is. Let's see. First, we need to determine the purpose of the writing when we're reading. We need to determine, what the tone of the writing is. Is it serious? Is it humorous, sympathetic, funny, angry, etc., scary? This whole Annabelle is scary. I don't watch movies like that because they just scare the bejesus out of me. But what are they trying to tell us? What's the tone? Then we look at the style of writing. And remember, our styles are descriptive, narrative, expository or expository, meant to explain or describe something. Could be persuasive, could be instructive, to give instructions. And then we need to identify the main idea of the writing. So the main idea is what the story or passage is mainly talking about. And it's important to know the main idea because it helps you understand reading, and it helps you kind of sort through the details that aren't necessarily important. A good example of, we're going to talk about primary sources and secondary sources. And a good example, I've got some examples here. Primary source is going to be something that is created by someone at the time of the event. So something like a letter, a diary, photographs, could be government records, autobiographies, things like that, speeches. That would be a primary source. Secondary source is going to be like a newspaper or a textbook, maybe biographies, TV documentaries, encyclopedias, things like that. So for example, to distinguish between primary and secondary sources. So say I was in a tornado, and a tornado hit and it destroyed my house, and I wrote out the storm in my bathroom. And then after it was all said and done, a news crew comes out and they interview me. My interview to that news crew is going to be a primary source. Then if that story is, aired on the news, and then a newspaper article writes an article about my story that they saw in the news, that newspaper article is a secondary source. And newspapers are famous for doing that. And not just newspapers, but news stories that you see on the internet. And if you look, they'll always cite their source. So they may have seen an interview on CNN, but they're writing a story about it, and then they cite CNN as the source. So the interview that I would give is a primary source. Secondary source would be somebody else that saw the interview and wrote a story about it. And okay, do we have any questions so far? This is actually our short lesson again, and I think that's a good thing, because sometimes I don't want to overwhelm you with too much at once. Let's see. We're going to have some assignments. If you have some questions for me, feel free to, you can turn on your mic and ask me, or you can put it in the chat box while I'm getting this up. We'll talk about what our assignments are going to be today. Let me see if I can find those real quick. Oh, I have to stop sharing that. And then I'm going to share this one. Okay. Okay, so today is November the 10th. We're in class 5, and we have the true story of the 3 little pigs. It is a little video, and it has a couple of questions. It's not, I think it's like 5 to 7 minutes long. I do want you to watch that and answer those questions today. And then we have determining author's point of view assignment, and then point of view in social studies, and then one on primary and secondary sources. So I do want you to get these 4 done, and we will talk about that when we come back at 11. If you do get to it, there is another Common Lit assignment. If you don't get to that before we come back, that's okay. You can finish it later. Those are just really good practice for you, excuse me. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. So if you'll work on those 4 assignments, and then we'll go over them. And I hope you enjoy that little, the true story of the 3 little pigs. It's really cute. And so if you would go ahead and sign out in the chat box for me, put your name in there. And then once you do that, you're free to go and work on your assignments. And I will see you back here at 11 o'clock, and we'll go over everything. I will see you later.